Now, let's say somebody bought this property in the traditional way, which is typically going to a bank and saying, hey, I want to buy this investment property. Can you give me a loan? If you meet all of their other qualifications, they're usually going to require you to put about 25% of the money needed down as your down payment. So let's just say for 200,000, 25% of that would be 50K as a down payment. They would still have the $2,000 rent, but now they would have a mortgage for the other 150K that they got from the bank. Today's episode is one you will not want to miss. We are going to be talking to Lisa, who is a new landlord through a property that she inherited and is putting together a plan on how she can take that opportunity from that new property and turn it into a chance to help fund her and her husband's retirement. We talk through how there are so many options within real estate investing, but what are the actual pieces of the puzzle that you need to nail down in order to put your plan together. We also go through and analyze a property together because, as I have often said, analyzing deals and knowing how to find comps and come to an accurate offer price is one of the most important parts of real estate investing. So you guys are in for a good one. And as always, if you want to be on the show and get the chance to work with me one-on-one and talk through your real estate investing journey, you can hit the link below to join my Run the Numbers monthly training program and also get the chance to book a call with me there. If you enjoy these episodes, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel or leave a review on your favorite podcast app. And let's get into the show with Lisa. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your real estate journey so far.
First time real estate investor. So we inherited a property. So we are looking to leverage that to get more doors, right? So it's a Los Angeles
Sure.
property, which is highly desirable. It's got a long-standing tenant in it. So we're not starting
Mhm.
exactly from square one. We do have some leverage. So we're looking at a property in San Antonio. And so we're just really looking to see what makes more sense. So we have the property in Los Angeles. We're looking at possibly taking out not a home ec loan, some type of loan, either a mortgage against that property to buy the
Mhm.
property in San Antonio. And once that property starts generating income, then probably looking at buying or paying off our current home, which is a dream. So just leveraging all the
Got you.
properties and then rent our current home out. And then I don't know, we'll become nomads. We can go and see the world at that point. Not quite sure what the plan is. Maybe move to LA. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But that's the goal, is to add more doors
Okay.
slowly, buy and holds primarily. And I wanted to put my toe into wholesaling just because it is a way to generate income. To be honest, I like passive
Mhm.
income because I have enough on my plate as is.
Sure.
So the driving for dollars is going to be
Right.
a no.
Tell me, you have the property in LA, you
I'm
have
in
looking at
Cypress,
properties in San
Texas.
Antonio. Where are you located?
Houston, yeah,
Okay, so you're in Texas. It's not
no.
too far from San Antonio. Okay, we'll dive into those. How did you come about
It's an
getting a property in
inheritance.
LA?
So my husband's parents passed away, and so he got a property from his parents.
And how's it been? You said there's a longstanding tenant there. How's that been becoming new landlords?
Everything's good. I have been on all the posts, all the
Okay.
blogs, all the Facebook groups, and I hear it can be nightmarish, especially in California, because it is not a landlord friendly state. Thank
Right.
God, so good so far. No complaints.
Okay. Well, knock on
Yes,
wood
that's the
to
goal.
hopefully keep it that way. And there's something to be said. Yes, California is a pretty tenant friendly state, but also finding a new place in LA isn't easy. And so hopefully if you've got a longstanding tenant who, enjoys the property, then they also have
Yes,
some incentive to
absolutely,
keep that
absolutely.
relationship
So
positive.
we're not looking at making any big
Okay.
changes or anything like that. Now we'll see how this tax thing goes, because the taxes that my husband's parents
Sure.
paid are not the taxes we'll have to pay. So we'll just take a look at that when the time comes.
Right. Okay. So that's going relatively well. I'm glad to hear that. And then so you're in Cypress, Texas. Why looking for another
Just because
property
we
in
have
San
inside
Antonio?
information on a property, so we may be able to get that property before it ever hits the market.
The BRRRR strategy is a way of buying real estate that allows you to put your money in, do a renovation, and then pull your money back out with a refinance in order to use it all over again and get properties faster than traditionally investing. And so it's super, super important to know that if you're going to be buying a property that needs work, you need to know if you are buying that property with cash, with a traditional rental property loan, or if you're going to be using the BRRRR strategy. So let's compare how the numbers might work for each. If you're listening to this on the podcast app, I'll do my best to explain clearly. This is a great opportunity to head over to YouTube so you can see me walk through these numbers on screen. Let's say that our property cost $150,000 for the purchase and $50,000 for the renovation. And so all in all, there was $200K needed to be all in on this deal. If somebody was buying this with cash, they would be all in for $200K. And let's say that the rent on the property was $2,000 a month. Again, these are just made up numbers in order to show you the math behind these problems. But let's go from there and say that after paying for utilities and for any repairs, this person made $1,500 in cash flow each month. Now, the reason their cash flow is so high in comparison to their rent is because they bought this property for cash. And so they don't have a monthly mortgage payment to pay off their mortgage loan. And so with that high cash flow, they'd be making $1,500 a month, or what is $18,000 per year. And in order to get your ROI, or your return on investment, you would take that $18,000, which is what they're making per year, and you would divide it by their initial investment, which was the $200,000. So in this case, this would be a 9% ROI. And that is for somebody buying this property with cash. Now, let's say somebody bought this property in the traditional way, which is typically going to a bank and saying, hey, I want to buy this investment property. Can you give me a loan? If you meet all of their other qualifications, they're usually going to require you to put about 25% of the money needed down as your down payment. So let's just say for $200,000, 25% of that would be $50K as a down payment. They would still have the $2,000 rent, but now they would have a mortgage for the other $150K that they got from the bank. And so let's just imagine that after they pay their mortgage, their taxes, their insurance, rather than cash flowing $1,500 like they did in our previous example, let's say that they cash flow $500. This would mean that they made $6,000 a year, and they had a $50,000 initial investment. So we take our 6,000 divided by our 50,000, and in this case, we have a 12% ROI. What this means is that this person only put in $50,000 and they are making a 12% return on that $50,000. And the amount that they're making is $6,000 a year. So higher return, lower cash in their pocket. So higher return, lower cash out of their pocket, but lower cash in their pocket. In our cash example, our person was getting a 9% return on investment. So they were making a lower return, but they were making $18,000 in comparison to $6,000, but they had to put in $200,000 to get there. So in this case, more money made, more money out of pocket, lower relative return on that money. Now, there's one more important comparison to make, and that is with the BRRRR. There's our B. As we run through these numbers, I'm going to do it very, very simply in what's called the perfect BRRRR. So the numbers are going to work out perfectly, but obviously it's not real life. Sometimes they're higher than this, sometimes they're lower than this, but we're just going to do it in the textbook way. So again, this property is going to be purchased for $200,000. Unlike the traditional way, we're not going to the bank and getting a long-term loan where we're putting a down payment or anything like that. But most people ask, where does that $200,000 come from if I don't have it in cash? It oftentimes comes from a combination of your money and something like a hard money lender. On my first BRRRR deal, I used a hard money lender and they gave me about 80% of what was needed, and I gave 20% of what was needed with my own money that I had made from wholesaling. So wherever the $200K comes from, we're going to start still by giving that $200K. In this case, we're going to say that the rent, again, is still going to be $2,000. But before we think about what our mortgage payment is, there's another super important number, and that's our ARV. In these other examples, our after repair value didn't really matter a ton to the actual money that we were going to make every single month. But with the BRRRR, it really does. So let's imagine that after we did this renovation, we bought the property for $150,000, we put $50,000 into it. the property was now worth $250K as its after renovation value. This is where the BRRRR gets really special. A bank will often give you a cash out refinance for 80% of the ARV. And I said this is going to be perfect because 80% of 250 is $200,000. And so that $200,000 cash out pays off this initial 200,000 that we put into the deal. And so if you got that from a hard money lender, or if you put that money out of your pocket, you've now paid yourself back and you have $0 left invested in the deal. That's why it's called a perfect BRRRR. Everything you put in, you got out. If that was your $200,000, you can then go repeat and buy another property with that. Or if that was a hard money lender's $200,000, you can pay them back and say, all right, let's do this again. Of course, there's going to be interest and things of that nature in there, but I'm just doing this as like the bare bones numbers so that you can see how it all works out. Now, from here, that $200,000 cash out becomes your new mortgage. And let's say that mortgage cash flows you the same $500 as in our previous example. So we have $500 of cash flow, which is $6K per year. But here's the thing. Our initial investment is no longer $200K or $50K. Our money left in this deal is $0. And if you remember from math class, you can't divide by zero. And so that means we have an infinite return on investment. We have $0 left in the deal, but we're making $6,000 each month. Whereas in comparison, in our traditional example, we had $50,000 left in the deal and we're making $6K each year. Or as in our cash example, we had $200,000 left in the deal, but we were making $18,000 per year. In this case, we have $0 left in the deal and we are making $6,000 per year, all profit. This is why knowing what strategy you're going to be using is so, so important, because it's going to significantly impact when you get your money back, how much money you make, and how high of a return on investment you want to get. Is it 9%? Is it 12%? Or is it an infinite return on investment?
I am looking for the
Okay, that's
best
fine.
way to come across these deals. So I've reached out to real estate agents that I know that I've known for years. It's like, hey, if you run across any distressed properties, it's like we can work something out. I'd appreciate you giving me a first look at it. And that's exactly what happened, how I found the property that we'll go over together. So that's been one way I've
Okay,
been
good.
finding it. Of course, I've been hit with, companies that say, hey, I can make the phone calls for you. And I provide the lists and it includes or cannot include skip tracing. So I'm being bombarded with a lot of things, just trying to figure out what's going to work best
Mm-hmm.
for me, the time that I have. And I
Right.
think my biggest question or the biggest fear as a new wholesaler is who's going to buy this property from me? It's like once I get it under contract, it's like I am going to need an
Right.
end buyer.
Sure. Okay. Cool. Let's dive into kind of all of those things one at a time. I think, like you said, there's a lot of options out there. And so you get a lot of people who are like, do this, do this, do that, do that. But it has to work
Mhm.
for you, your situation, how much time you have available, et cetera, et cetera. But I also like to start with the big picture end goal in
Mhm.
mind because it also has to work for that. You mentioned something that scares me a little bit. I'm not telling you not to do it. It just scares me a little bit. You mentioned wanting to pay off your current mortgage. And I'm always a little bit interested in why people want to pay off their current mortgage. So tell me some of your thoughts.
Because I would like not to have a mortgage at this house. There's no rhyme or reason. I know that it's probably not the smartest thing to do, and we will take good advice. We have some meetings with some other people, and from what I'm hearing, it's like, no, don't do that.
If you're at like a 2, 3, I mean, even these days, 4% interest rate,
Yeah, yeah.
again, I'm not a financial advisor, right? Talk to the appropriate people, but I will say that
Mm-hmm.
just from a math perspective. So, LA property doesn't have a mortgage on it. Great. So you're saying there's equity in this LA property,
Mm-hmm.
probably quite a bit because properties in
Mm-hmm.
Los Angeles are expensive. So
Yes.
the value of that is probably pretty high. You don't have a mortgage,
Right.
so your
Yes.
expenses are pretty low. Got that. So you're saying, okay, we have all this equity. we can put a loan, whether it's a cash
Mm-hmm.
out refinance or a HELOC or something of that nature, onto and use those funds to
Correct.
buy a property in San Antonio.
Again,
Okay, why? Tell me why.
so our end game is to fund our retirement. I am a Gen Xer. Fund retirement, yes, because
There we go.
now they're
Okay.
saying you have to work to 67 and a half in order for, and no, no.
You don't want to. Okay, great. That's what I was trying to. Yeah, no, totally makes sense. That's what I was trying to get to, right? So if
Yes.
the end goal is fund retirement, let's talk about how. Are you funding retirement by making a lump sum and putting it into the stock market? Are you funding retirement by making a lump sum and living off of it? Are you funding retirement by having rental properties and living off of the cash flow? What's the financial
Sure.
engine that you're thinking you
So
want to
it will be
use to live
a
off of in
combination of
retirement?
401k, IRAs, and then the
Mhm.
rental property is what what we want to generate our retirement from.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and I know you had a bunch of questions. I'll promise I will get to those. I just want to walk through this thought experiment because we
Mm-hmm.
always want to like work backwards, right? So like what the end goal is and work backwards from there and then figure out what pieces we need to put in place. So, one thing I would be thinking about is like I don't know how much you're cash flowing on the Los Angeles property. If you want to share your exact numbers, you
Okay.
can. We could talk about them, but you also don't have to. But I'm just thinking that Los Angeles property with no mortgage is going to have higher cash flow than if
Mm-hmm.
it did have a mortgage, right? So you're going to reduce your cash
Yes.
flow on your LA property to
Mm-hmm.
and buy a property in San Antonio. So you just want to make sure that the added cash flow you get from the new
Mm-hmm.
property is worth it from taking it
And the
away
math we've
from
done so
the LA
far,
property.
the
So
math is
that
mathing.
it works out.
The math is mathing.
Okay, we love that. Okay, so let's take the next step then. We have the LA property. We use the equity in there to get another property in San Antonio. Now you've got more cash flow than you would have had before. What's the plan from
Either a
there?
third door, and I think we're quickly not
Hmm.
going to even consider paying off the mortgage here. So add a third door, or either just beginning to add
Okay.
to an IRA Roth, add to an account for retirement.
Hmm.
So one of those two things, yeah. And I think
Got
it's a
you.
fourth door.
Got you. And that's so you can start building up your rental
Mm-hmm.
portfolio and have cash flow that will
Mm-hmm.
contribute to your other
Mm-hmm.
income streams to live off of in retirement. Great. When you're looking for that property in San Antonio, you mentioned that you're reaching out to agents to get distressed properties. So, are you planning on burring that property in San Antonio? Have you thought about how
Well,
you
the
want to go
property that
about
we're
getting a
looking
distressed
at,
property?
we already have inside information. So the house, it's under probate. So there is an opportunity for us to possibly make a cash offer for that home. So it is, let's say it's well under $200,000. So we're not even tapping the entire equity that's in the LA property. So there will still even be a sizable
Right.
amount of
Got
equity
you.
in the LA property, taking out a small percentage to buy this property for to buy the property and do the repairs in San Antonio.
Got you. Okay, great. And have you
Yes.
heard of the
So
BRRRR
the with
strategy?
rehab, rent, some
Okay.
buy, rehab, all the B's and the R's. Yes, I have heard of it.
Yep, all of the V's and the R's. Okay, great. So let's kind of walk through the
Sure,
numbers
sure. And I
if
think
you'd be
I,
cool with that. So about how much do you think you're going to take from the LA property to put into the purchase and renovation of the
200,000.
San Antonio property? So you need 200K and you're thinking of renovating the
Correct.
property and then renting it out. What do you think it'll rent out for? Or first, let me ask you, what do you think it'll be worth after you're
Between 15 and
done with the
$1,800
renovation
a month for rent. Yes.
for a rent? Gotcha. And how much do you think the
Once we're
property will be
done,
worth?
we're looking at maybe 200,000. Once we're done with the reno.
Okay. So the first thing that worries me there is that if you're going to take 200,000 for the purchase and the renovation and it's going to be worth 200,000 after, you're not really
Mm.
creating any equity.
Mm.
One of the things that I learned through wholesaling from my buyers was the way that they look at properties and the renovation needed in order to decide what is a good deal or not, right? And so
Thank
I would
you.
love to go through that with you, because at first glance, it seems like you're going to put $200,000 into this property
Okay.
and it's only going to be worth 200,000, and you're not making any money for yourself. And if something goes wrong,
Okay.
then you're automatically losing money. So the formula that my buyer taught me, and this is what I use in wholesaling,
Okay.
so this would be good for you if you decide to wholesale, but it's also what I use if I'm deciding to buy the property. And the formula is
Ah,
taking the
okay.
ARV,
Mm-hmm.
right, and multiplying that by,
Okay.
let's say, 75%. Typically, people use anywhere from 70% to 80%. The
Mm-hmm.
lower the number, the more conservative. The
Okay.
higher the number, the more risky. And what that's doing is giving you a buffer. So it's saying, okay, my ARV might
Mm-hmm.
be 200,000, but let me multiply that by 75% to give
Okay.
myself a 25% buffer, right? Then they take the rehab budget. So then they subtract the rehab. And if you're wholesaling, then you can subtract the
Mm-hmm.
wholesale fee. But in this case, you're not wholesaling. So what we really need to worry about is that ARV times 75% minus the rehab budget. So this is a really important distinction, is that they're telling you their estimate for the
Mm-hmm.
value in its current condition,
Okay.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
185, let's call it. They will not tell you the value after you've repaired it, because they don't know if you're replacing the roof. They don't know if you're
Mm-hmm.
putting marble countertops or the cheap countertops from the back aisle at Home Depot. They don't know
Mm-hmm.
what type of flooring you're using, right? There's no one that can determine what renovation you're going to do except yourself. And so this is why running the numbers on the property to
Mm-hmm.
see what it might be worth afterwards are
Okay.
so important. The first step in all of this is making sure that the after repair value, that number that you're saying this property is going to be worth X amount after the renovation, is correct. And
Yes.
right now you're kind of just guessing. And so let's just imagine that your guess is correct. Let's imagine it'll be worth around 200,000, and we can finish out our math problem here
Okay.
just so you can get an idea for what I'm saying. So the 200,000 times 75% would be
Mm-hmm.
150,000. Then you have a rehab budget, and you said your rehab budget is about
Yes. On the high.
50,000.
That's very, very high. Yes.
So you
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. I like working with the high
Mm-hmm.
numbers rather than the low numbers, right? So then we have our 150 minus our 50,000. So we'd be down to 100,000 as what's called our
Okay.
maximum allowable offer, right? Now, that's the equation, but I don't know if those numbers are correct, because we started with an
Okay.
ARV that we really aren't sure about. There are a lot of people out there who have different opinions on what is the most important quality to be a real estate investor. Some people say you need to be able to talk to anyone. Some people say you need to be able to do the work physically yourself to save money. But in my opinion, the most important part of all of this is being able to analyze deals. And this is a perfect example why. Lisa's really in a situation where if she were to put the $200,000 into this deal, she would have no idea how much the house would be worth afterwards. And that's not a knock on her. She's going through the process. She's working to figure this out, which is why she booked this call with me. But she needs to know, is that house going to be worth $200,000 afterwards? Going to be worth $1,000,000 afterwards? It is the most crucial part of deciding where you should put your time and money, knowing how to analyze that deal. That's why I have the Run the Numbers monthly training program. It's $9 a month, and the entire point is that you get to practice with me every single month analyzing deals. And on top of that, that's how you get the chance to come on the show. So if there's anything that you're going to put your time and attention into, in my opinion, it needs to be accurately analyzing deals so that you're not putting bad deals under contract for yourself or for other buyers if you're trying to be a wholesaler. It is absolutely crucial. I know you asked a couple other questions that I want to get to. One of them was around
Yes.
connecting with buyers, right? So if you're going to go in and you're going to wholesale to get experience and to get some income coming in, then you're
Right.
going to not be the end buyer, right? You're going to be finding distressed properties, passing those off to investors. First, I will
No,
say
it's not.
wholesaling is not
No.
passive, right? It's not passive at all. And I know you said that in terms of time, you have other things going on. You can hire other people to do things for you, or you can work through the process slower. But
Hmm.
like there's going to be those determinations that you have to make. In terms of finding buyers, there's a couple of different ways that I like to do it. One is I really like to tap into the local Facebook groups in the area in which I'm investing. So I know for a fact, if you go to Facebook and you type in San Antonio real estate investors, there's going to be some groups, some private, some public, but I join as many as I possibly can. And I would start really just scrolling and looking through and seeing people are going to be posting, hey, I'm looking for a property to buy this month, or hey, I need a handyman to go out to one of my rentals, or et cetera, et cetera. So that's one way of finding buyers is in those groups, seeing who's active. Another thing I really like to do to find buyers is I like to go to PropStream. And so let me share my screen with you. So one of the things like people typically look at PropStream as a way to find distressed properties, which is the main thing that I use it for and use it for property research. But they also have this tab up here that says cash buyers. And so they've got a list of 65,000 properties
Okay.
that were purchased with cash. And so that's a great way to start finding cash buyers. But we don't want to call all 65,000 or try to connect with them. And so up here where it says filter, there's a couple of different things that we can do. One is I put no as owner occupied because I don't want just like a millionaire who bought their house in cash and then moved
Hmm.
in. They're not like an investor that I'm looking for, right? I want an investor who bought a house for cash and then used it, as a rental or something. The other things you can look for is down here where it says ownership info. They have let me see, a number of properties owned. And so let's just say 50 as a minimum, right? So now our 65,000 came down to 12,000, meaning that there's 12,000 properties in San Antonio that were purchased with cash and that the owner owns
Okay.
50 or more other properties. So
You're
those
right.
are high level cash buyers, right? If they've bought 50 properties or more, then there's a couple of things you could do with this. You
Okay.
can skip trace this list and make calls to those cash buyers and say, "Hey, I noticed that just last year you bought a property on X street. I am a
Okay.
wholesaler and I am looking for distressed properties in that similar area. What's your email address? I would love to send you properties,
Okay.
that fit your criteria." Right? That's a great
So you
way to
use
connect
skip
with
trace because
with
I
those
know in
people.
Texas they don't have the information listed of the buyer. It's private and you can't see it.
Right. So you're not going to see all of the information here, but you can still skip trace, to my
Okay.
knowledge,
Okay.
properties in Texas. Right. And I think
Okay.
on PropStream, it's like 10 cents each or something like that. Yep. Another thing that you could do, this is a great way to find rental property owners. But if I just reset this here, they also have a list that under this quick list choices, they have one that says flippers. And to my understanding, the way this works is that these are properties that were purchased and then resold for a higher amount within like a year period. And so those are flippers who went in, bought a distressed property, fixed it up, and then sold it. Those are also really good cash buyers to connect with because they're constantly needing to flip homes. So they're constantly
Okay.
looking for new distressed properties to purchase.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay.
Cool. Those are two really good ways that like you can start out and have conversations with buyers. The other piece of it is once you find a buyer, what do you say to them? And what really comes in there is how can you offer value, right? For myself, it was like, hey, I have a lot of time to drive around, right? Like I don't have kids, right? Like I've got free time. I can drive for dollars and log 100 properties a day for you. What type of properties are you looking for? If you
Mm-hmm.
buy one that I log, then will I
Okay.
get a finder's fee? That's one way. But for yourself, it might be that you can handle marketing, or you are just a really good researcher, and if they're looking for properties built between 1950 and 1980
Mm-hmm.
in this school district for this amount, then when you find that property, then you
Okay.
know someone who's
I like
looking
that.
for
Okay.
that type of thing.
That's very helpful because
Okay,
I
is that
think of
part
this as
helpful?
being a private shopper, a personal shopper for cash buyers. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and if you think about
mm-hmm.
it, like, say I'm a flipper, and say I'm flipping 2 to 3 houses at once throughout the year. That's a lot of work on those properties. I'm managing contractors, I'm managing materials, I'm checking work. But once those properties are sold, I then have to turn around and find another property. And so if I have, like you said, a personal shopper, a wholesaler who can consistently bring me deals that meet my criteria, then
Mm-hmm.
that person becomes really, really valuable to my business. And I think people oftentimes think like, oh man, I need to meet 100 cash buyers. You really just need like
Yeah.
2 or 3 that are serious and that are consistently buying, you know? And I have a list of, 15 to 20 buyers that I know, but my best
Yeah.
buyers, there's like 2 or 3 of them that are really you
I
can be
like this
crucial to their
approach.
business.
So it is worth it to go ahead and buy
Okay.
PropStream or do the monthly subscription because I noticed because the
In
others
my
don't
opinion, it
have that
is.
find cash buyers, flippers don't have that component to their search engine. Zillow doesn't have it. I checked. I don't think Redfin has it. I looked. Yeah.
Right. So like they won't have it because they're just showing what's for sale. Now, you might be able to
Mm-hmm.
identify, "Oh, this house looks flipped.
Yeah.
Can I do some digging and find out
Okay.
who the agent is?" And you can put it together. But in terms of like, here's a list of 800 people who flipped a house in San Antonio in the last year.
Yes, it is.
In my opinion, that's worth at least getting the free
Absolutely.
trial of
Absolutely.
PropStream and trying it
Okay.
out. Anything else before we look at this property
No,
together?
those were my two biggest concerns was finding the end buyer, finding the cash buyer, and what to do with these property with the how to best leverage this property. So I'm just going to run the formula on the house that we're looking at in San Antonio. Just do the comps, run the numbers, and see if it makes sense.
Okay, cool. Let's go through that process together here. This is the
That
property
we
that
did
you
take a
wanted
look
to
at.
look at.
Yes.
Okay. And we're using this as just kind of a practice for
Yeah.
finding comps.
Yes, I will let you because I tried to find comps. I didn't find any. I think I found like one. So within that 3 month or 6 month period,
Okay.
that you want that window, I found
Hmm.
one. And from what I know, finding one comp is not enough to offer anything on.
Right. I always say comps equals confidence, right? So, like, if I have
Mm-hmm.
10 comps, I have a lot of confidence in what that property be worth. If I have one, to
Yeah,
me, that's not enough for me to
it
offer.
it
Some people
wasn't
will,
for
but
for us
for
as
me, it's not.
well. I didn't move forward on it.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's see. I
Mm-hmm.
like to use Redfin because I like the way it looks. You can run comps on PropStream as well, but
Yes.
since Redfin is free, let's go through that. So I use this map down here, and then it always
Mm-hmm.
says nearby homes for sale. So it looks like our property is by the
Mm-hmm.
tire shop and the Mexican restaurant. So I just click over on that tab, and I know that our property is right here because we saw
Mm-hmm.
the restaurant over here and then the tire shop. And what I first want to do is I first zoom out and I say, okay, what are the neighborhood boundaries around this property? And this is actually a little bit of a tough
Yeah.
one because it's
Mm-hmm.
very clear that we got the highway down here, right? So I'm not going to cross the highway because that's a major boundary. But I've also got farm to
Mm-hmm.
market road here. And then I've got this road here that looks
Mm-hmm.
like North Cleveland Street. And I'm not exactly sure what the major roads are
So it's
around
going to
our
be the
property right
Farm to
here.
Road, Cleveland. That's a major.
And
Mm-hmm. The Farm to
yeah,
Road.
tell
That's
me
a
what you
that's a
think.
major, and it sits off of Cleveland. So that was a major road because I mean you could look down the street and see the major thoroughfare. It's that close to the major street.
Mhm. Okay. So in that case, I really wouldn't want to cross over that major
Mm-hmm.
road when running the comps on this, right? But what it also looks like is that there's not a ton of properties in this little cut between the highway and farm to market road. So I'm going to work with what I can. We're not going to cross the farm. We're not going to cross this water right here. We're not going to cross the highway, and we're not going to cross Cleveland. And so this is the area that we're looking in. Another thing I just quickly noticed is that if this property is on the corner of two major roads, it's going to have a decreased value in comparison to something that's more interior to the
Yep.
neighborhood, because it's going to be louder. It's going to be harder to get in and out of your driveway. So that's something I always think of when we're near a major road like that. But that said, I want to look at houses that sold. You mentioned this in the last 6 months in this area. And it looks like we have 6, right? So in this small area, we have 6 homes sold in the last 6 months. And the first thing that I like to look for, I like to use this table view, is I like to look and see were any of these houses flipped or renovated by an investor. Because remember, I'm not super concerned with
Right.
what is this house worth today. When I'm trying to find my ARV, I'm thinking about what will that
Right.
house be worth after the renovation. And so I want to see, are there any other houses that are in that post renovation condition? And so I like to look through the pictures, and let's look through these pictures together. There's only a couple of them. In your opinion, is this a post
That looks
renovation
definitely post
house?
reno. Definitely post reno.
Okay. Tell me why. What
The
picture
updated
made you say
counters,
that?
the sink. That's a newer faucet in there. Newer looking counter.
Yeah, it could be. My first thought is most people aren't going in with the natural wood look cabinets in newer renovations. So to me that seems a little dated, but it also does look pretty fresh. It definitely doesn't look like somebody just moved out of it. So you might be right. It might be post renovation. And that's something I always have to remind myself. That's something I always remind people, is like, just because we personally have a different style doesn't mean that it's not fresh, right? So we could look at that. We can also look at the description that oftentimes tells us, is it post renovation? Says it has fresh paint and partial flooring replacement. Doesn't say anything else about updates, but it's possible, right? So we can leave that on our list for now. We can also look at some of these other properties. Here's another one. Thoughts on this being post renovation? What do you think?
That is dated.
That is
That's
very dated.
oh
I don't know if I've
my.
ever seen such a red kitchen. But this is
Yes, it
definitely a
is.
house that is
No, it is
lived in.
not.
This is not post renovation, right? This is not an investor went in
No,
and did the
no.
rooster on the oven, and you know, or even before we got to that picture,
Yeah.
put decorations and put
Somebody's
this
living.
furniture in there,
Yes.
right? This is a lived in home. Absolutely. They've got their clothes just like the rest of us, right? So this is not a house
No.
that I would want to use to compare post renovation, because it's not, right? So that's a good look at this one. Let's look at one more and see what we think.
And that's new construction. Would we even consider new construction with an older build? The house we're looking at was 1950s, I think, and only 1,100 square feet.
Great
So I don't even know
question.
if that's a fair comp. Fair comp.
Right. So your thought process is really good. One of the things I will encourage you to do when you're walking through properties is focus on one characteristic at a
Okay.
time. And I'll walk you through kind of how we do it, because it can get confusing. Imagine we had like 10 properties and we were thinking about age,
Yeah.
size, bedroom,
Yeah.
bathroom, post renovation or not. It can get very, very confusing. And so that's why right now I only look at, is this post renovation or not? If yes, then we go
Got it.
to comparing bedroom, bathroom, comparing age, et cetera, et cetera. But your thought process is 100% correct. So in terms of its condition, is
You
this
can't get any
freshly
fresher
done?
than new construction. Can't get any fresher.
You can't get any fresher. It's new. Okay. So let's use this property as our
Okay.
only potential comp. Let's say it's the only one we have that is post renovation. Here's how I'd walk through that order of, I
Mm-hmm.
call it like the order of operations, like PEMDAS, right? Like, please excuse
Mm-hmm.
my dear Aunt Sally when you go
Mm-hmm.
parentheses and you go exponents. That's how I think about it. I go condition. Well, actually,
Right.
first we did nearby, right? We made
Mm-hmm.
sure the ones we were looking at were nearby. Then we said, of those nearby ones, which ones were sold in the last 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
right? We weren't looking at size or condition or anything, just sold in the last 6 months. Then we looked at condition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now I like to look at size. So our property is
Yes.
1,133 square feet, right? This potential comp is
Yes.
2,000 square feet. I typically like to stay within about
Yeah.
500 bigger or smaller. So in that case, I would
Right.
probably say not a great comp. But for the purposes of it, let's go through the other
Mm-hmm.
criteria just so I can show you how I walk through it. So we did condition, we did size. Then I look at bedroom, bathroom. So say this was close enough, then
Mm-hmm.
I would say, okay, this is a 4-2. This is a 3-2. It's not a huge difference.
Yeah.
Um, it just depends. If I had 5 other comps that were also three
Yeah.
twos, then I'd probably get rid of the
So
four
we
two.
got.
But you have to kind of make a decision. So that's the 3-2. Then from there, I like to look at the age and style of the property. So just looking at the front, this is looks like a brick, 1 story
That's
with
siding.
a
It is
3-car
all
garage,
siding. All four
right?
sides. That's siding.
Oh, siding under
Just a
there.
brick bottom. Just a brick
Let's
bottom.
see.
Just
Sometimes
on the
they'll tell
front. That's a
you.
facade. The at the bottom. But that because we walked the
Mm-hmm.
property.
Okay. Good to know. So for people that weren't able to walk, right, or don't know how to
Mm-hmm.
find it, I just scrolled down here on this Redfin page. And if you're ever not sure, you can
Okay.
find a bunch of information down here. So I looked at the exterior and it says brick veneer, right? So that's just the
Mm-hmm.
fronting and cement board, right? So that's really good to know. Um, let's look at our comparison property. This
Mm.
is wood siding, right? But even just from a visual standpoint, is this property comparable in style
Not at all.
to this property?
Mm-mm.
No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And then we look at age. It's built in 2023. Our property
Yeah.
was built in 1965.
Not at all.
Not comparable, right? So in this case, I would say, yeah, we don't
Mm-hmm.
we don't have any good comps for this property. And there are some people who I guess they just have the money like that and they're like, I don't care. I want it. I'm going to make it a good
Yeah.
deal. For me, if I'm going to, right? Or for you, if you're going to take your money
Mm-hmm.
out of this other property to buy and renovate one, you want to have the confidence of having those comps. And so that same process that we just ran through in
Yes.
that super organized fashion, nearby, sold less than
Mm-hmm.
6 months ago, condition, size, going through that for your other property is what will help you determine, okay, now I have these
Yes.
3 to 5 comps. What's the average that they sold for? Maybe it'll be 200, maybe it'll be
Okay.
250, I don't know. Just have to see. But once you find that average, then you can use that as your ARV and really go through the
Yeah.
numbers and feel confident in how much money you can put into that property and then be able to use,
Absolutely.
to make it a good
Absolutely.
deal.
Doing the due diligence.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
It,
Yeah, I hope that's helpful. Thank you to Lisa for coming on the show today. Again, if you're interested in getting on a call with me, the link to join my Run the Numbers monthly training program is below, and that's how you get the chance to sign up. Hope to see you there. And in the meantime, you can check out the next episode linked here or in the description.